Hi guys, welcome to my first post-race commentary video. Today I'm going to talk about the inaugural 2016 race in Melbourne, and what a race it was. One of the most exciting GPs I've seen in the past few years. 57 laps of non-stop action, not only in the front, but throughout the whole field. All the teams performed well, all the teams were fighting for positions, and it just was exciting racing. Let's get to it. I'll read you through the results right now. Nico Rosberg takes home the first win of the season in front of Hamilton and Vettel. The rest of the top 10, Ricciardo, Massa, Grosjean, Hülkenberg, Bottas, Sainz, and Verstappen. I have to highlight here Romain Grosjean's 6th place position for Haas F1. The last time a new manufacturer entered the sport and scored points in its first race was back in 2002 when Toyota entered with Alan McNish and Mika Salo. In that case, it was Mika Salo taking the home 1 point by finishing 8th. But overall, what a race. What a race. Let's just start from the beginning. Ferrari started really strong right off the bat. As soon as the 5 red lights went out, the 2 Ferraris got in front of the Mercedes cars. Hamilton had a dreadful start, fell back to 6th place, and was held up by Massa for a while, but that was until the 19th lap where there was a terrible crash between Esteban Gutierrez of Haas F1 and Fernando Alonso of McLaren. It was a terrible crash. My friend and I, we were watching it. Alonso flipped his car twice, ended up upside down. Fortunately, he's okay. We're very happy to hear that. He walked away from the crash. He was cleared by the medical pavilion afterwards. So fortunately, no repercussions there. It was just a racing incident. Alonso was trying to get past Gutierrez, cut too close to him, hit his rear left wheel, and flew. It was a very high-speed accident. I have not seen a big crash like that in a while. And fortunately, no one was injured, so that is great. So let's go through some really good performances today. We can look at Jolyon Palmer, finished in front of his more experienced teammate of Kevin Magnussen, both for Renault. And Palmer overall today, I saw he was very solid, except for when he had Sainz and Verstappen up his gearbox at the more or less the end of the race, let's say, and he was under pressure and made some mistakes that caused him to lose the positions and lose a points finish. But overall, a very good performance for the rookie. The other 2 rookies, Rio Haryanto and Pascal Wehrlein, well, Pascal Wehrlein finished in 16th place, a very good finish for Manor. He was lapped, however, but he is last due to the fact that there were other 6 cars that retired. Rio Haryanto had an issue with his car when the race was red flagged for the Gutierrez and Alonso incident. We still don't know what happened, but still, overall, a good performance for Manor. I think there's going to be many good things to come for this small team, who in the end I think is in all of our hearts a little bit, considering that they're the underdogs. They don't have the high budget. They're just there racing for the pure pleasure of racing. Now, some other good performance today, we can look at Daniel Ricciardo with the Red Bull. It seems that Red Bull is doing very well. They have a good package together. Their engine, the Renault engine, which is tagged as Taguer this year, they seem to maybe have overcome the weak power that they were suffering last year. We'll see how that continues to go throughout the year. I mean, the Renault powertrain is still kind of weak. However, we did notice that when Palmer was fighting the 2 Toro Rossos, for those who don't know, are currently running the 2015 Ferrari powertrain. It seemed that the Renault for this year kept its own with the last year's engine, which is a good step forward considering how poor they were last season. And in the end, they're going to be able to develop the engine throughout the year. They still have a good amount of tokens at their disposal, so we're just going to see how that unfolds throughout the rest of the season. They have room to grow, and with those tokens that they have, I believe that they can get good results from this engine by the end of the season. So let's move on and talk more about the front runners. Ferrari started out very well, like I said, out in the lead. They kept extending their lead. It seemed that they finally were able to match Mercedes' pace. However, once the red flag came down, the Mercedes opted to put on the medium tire, which they have been testing out the whole of preseason. They use about 60 sets of this medium tire during the Barcelona tests, so we know that Toto Wolff is confident with this tire. We know that Mercedes thinks that they can perform well, and like I said, they chose to put this on during the red flag period. And Ferrari, on the other hand, they had just done their stop, so they elected to stay with the super softs, and this was a very poor decision on their part, because we knew as soon as Mercedes put on those mediums that they were going till the end of the race. There was no doubt about it. However, Ferrari thought that maybe they could match the pace, or be faster than them, create a 20-plus second gap so they could pit again and retain their first position. However, this wasn't really the case because as soon as the safety car went in, we noticed that the Mercedes was more or less keeping up with the Ferrari. Rosberg, who was in second position, was keeping a steady gap between 3 and 4 seconds to Vettel, who was running on the soft tires, so which are, in theory, the tires that are faster because they have more grip. And the commentators, Martin Brundle and Crofty, they were essentially saying that the track temperature was going down, therefore the harder tire was going to be the more performing one. And in my opinion, Ferrari then completely messed up on their strategy by waiting too long to pit to a harder tire. And in the end, we saw the result. We saw that Vettel, when he pit, made it up to Hamilton, but could not pass him because at that point he had been on the softs for 20 laps. Softs for 20 laps is not a good idea, let's be honest. Daniel Ricciardo was on his for 25 laps, and we saw that he was just dropping off the pace a lot towards the end of that stint. But anyway, it was a great race, a lot of excitement. That last part with Hamilton and Vettel, neck and neck for 3 laps with a gap of 1 second. Unfortunately for me, because I'm a Ferrari fan, Vettel couldn't make it past Hamilton, but I still enjoyed the racing. So let's talk a little bit more about the midfield cars right now. One of the most interesting battles today was the one within Toro Rosso between Carlos Sainz Jr. and Max Verstappen. During the 10-15 lap period where the two Toro Rossos were trailing Jolyon Palmer in his Renault, we could hear a lot of the team radio from Max Verstappen, who was more or less complaining about the fact that the team was not letting him go through. And even before that, he had complained about problems with his tires, but Toro Rosso did not let him pit until after Carlos Sainz. So Max Verstappen showing us a bit that he's like his father, not afraid to show his emotions. And in fact, they used the beeper quite a few times, which I found absolutely hilarious. But moving on, I think that this Carlos Sainz versus Max Verstappen feud is going to be the feud of the future. They were talking about it during the race. These are two very young, very talented young men, and sooner or later, they're going to get a top drive, and they are going to compete for world championships. And I think we're going to see a similar rivalry to what we have between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. It's a very big psychological battle. Granted, Hamilton doesn't see it that way. Rosberg might. I don't know. He hasn't really talked about it. But anyway, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, they are the two to watch for the rest of this season. It's going to be a very interesting plot point for 2016. Anyway, guys, that's all the time I have for today. I'll see you back next week with the post-qualifying commentary for the Bahrain GP, which will start next Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. Leave me a comment below. Tell me what you thought about today's race, and I'll see you next week in Bahrain.